How's it going, guys? Jamie here. I thought I'd just release a video just to talk through some of the recent controversies around the A-level results, and I think GCSE results can also could be put in that bracket as well. Yeah, I just wanted to give my views, talk about some potential options, and things to consider with this whole results process. And I also want to talk about my experience as well and how it was roughly about 10 years ago now that I was in higher education doing A levels and a couple of injustices myself. So I want to share them as well and sort of my story and sort of what I did and sort of how I found that. So yeah, I hope this reaches a wider audience. If not, in the future, hopefully, as maybe I have more subscribers, this will reach a wider audience. But certainly a relevant topic at the moment, and maybe it might help a few people who are currently struggling through this current process with their A levels and GCSEs. So yeah, I'll get going anyway. So my thoughts on the whole thing. So obviously, the A level sort of courses have changed quite a lot since I was in doing my A levels. When I was doing it, there were we used to have 6 modules, and of that, typically you'd have 2 exams, 1 coursework per year per subject. So quite heavy going, to be honest with you. But I think back then there was a lot more data to go off, so potentially might have been some better outcomes and some more to work off. Had it happened back when I was doing it, because that's say, for instance, it was your final A level exams, you would at least have maybe 4 or 5 modules of your course that you could maybe work off, and an average could have been worked from there. And equally, even if it was you're doing your ASs, you could have, again, there might have been a couple of modules that they could have based it off as well. But yeah, I certainly feel very sorry for especially for the candidates, students who are doing their A2s and who were hoping to get his university and get their final results. It's obviously a very difficult situation at the moment, because from what I've read, there was sort of about 40% of students were getting reduced marks, lower than what they were predicted to get, or were by their tutors, or based on their predicted grades and things like that. I'm not sure how the whole algorithm worked, but or how the predicted grade worked, but I'm assuming it's a combination of how you did in your mocks, sort of maybe some previous modules if you've done that, and sort of based on where your current attainment in terms of how you're doing in classes, how you're doing in in sort of mock tests or in classes as well. So maybe based on GCSEs as well if possible. But yeah, it's obviously very difficult situation for them students. So I deeply sympathise and even empathise. I've got obviously some of my own experience, which I'll go into in a little bit. But certainly, difficult process, and I certainly would recommend, where justified, definitely appeal the process. From what I've read, there's going to be a worldwide or certainly UK wide review of the process. So there's certainly a decent chance that you'll have that overturned. I don't know, but again, I don't know what that looks like, in terms of statistically who will get those overturned. But definitely something I would definitely do if I was in your boat. If you're one of them students who actually are doing that. Actually, one of my wife's cousins is again is going through his A levels, and he's had the same. He's had his marks dropped from what was expected. He fortunately has got his university place, but I think it was his insurance one. So I think there's a lot of students out there who possibly missed out on their first insurance places and are in a little bit of a pickle at the moment. Maybe they, I know you can go through extra, you can go through clearing and things like that with UCAS. Well, certainly when I was doing it anyway. But yeah, it's not an ideal situation at all to have to to have to go through that process. So deeply sympathise. And what I want to talk about as well. What would I do if I was in that situation now? Well, certainly if I was predicted lower grades, I'd definitely appeal as a first port of call. what I would also do, that's say that that appeal isn't successful, I would look at potentially, um, maybe just going back. And again, not always ideal taking a year out of your life, but I would be thinking if I really felt that I could get better grades in the grand scheme of things, a year is not that long a time. I'd maybe look take a gap year, use that time to reset any modules maybe from your ASs that you weren't happy with. Work on your A2 as well if there's any exams you need to do. Get them in for the earliest point. It might be November, December, January, whenever that sort of initial exam can go in, and have a go. And then you can then have another go in the summer potentially. I'm not sure how it all works now, but I'm assuming that you probably can do that. So yeah, I definitely look into doing that. But yeah, so obviously it is really obviously a difficult situation, and I can completely understand students who don't want to go through that process. So yeah, it's completely understandable. But yeah, also what I want to talk about as well was my experience with A levels and sort of the hardship that I encountered as well when I was doing it. So as I said, it was different back when I was doing it. As I said, you were looking at 3 modules per year per subject. Typically 2 exams, 1 course, where it was the split for the most part. And with that, you had exams January, summer, throughout your 2-year stint of doing A levels. I just a little bit of background on myself. So I would, in terms of when I was in school, and I'll probably maybe another video can go into more detail, but definitely there was I got a little bit cocky when I was doing my GCSEs. Thought I could get away with not revising and just sitting there watching TV. It's like, oh, no, I don't need to do this, and I was quite lazy, couldn't be bothered, quite arrogant as well. Thought I could just breeze it, just get top grades without really having to put any effort in. Little did I know that didn't sort of go to plan. I didn't do badly, but I certainly pretty mediocre. Passing. With I think I passed everything. But it was B's and C's, nothing. Any major note compared to what I was capable of. Moreover, really, I knew I was very capable and just didn't perform to the best of my ability. So yeah, that was definitely a disappointment. So I went into my A levels really sort of thinking, right, I really need to crack down here and get some top results, because obviously this is make or break. This is university. It's obviously quite a big thing, and there's just my pride was hurt as well from my GCSE. So yeah, I had to make sure I turned things around. Bit of a rocky start when I first started doing them, but I started getting into the swing of things. My technique started getting better, and I started getting quite good results. I sort of did pretty mediocre by the end of my ASs, but then went into my A2 and I thought, right, I'm going to start putting for some resits. I'm going to really push for this, and really by January of so I did my January exams. I think got the results sort of about February-ish time, something like that. Maybe March, something like that. And this during my A2, sort of the halfway point, just before sort of going into my summer exams, got my results from a couple of my A2s and a couple of AS resets, and I really turned things around, and I was on really quite good grades, and I was looking in a really strong position. From there, I decided to decline some of the I actually went ahead and declined all of the offers that I had already. I had a couple of sorry, no, not unconditionals, a couple of conditionals, rejections from some of the higher tier universities, but I was more in line with what they wanted now that I did my resits. Declined all them and went through extra and went and picked 1 course to go on, and really went into that final period hoping to really try and maintain and keep what I had, because if I maintained where I was, then I was set to do really well. Unfortunately, I had a really difficult period. Well, no, not so difficult, but I just didn't do very well in the exams, to be honest with you, and dropped off quite significantly in the summer exams, and pretty much across the board, I dropped a grade in um, every one of my subjects, which was really disappointing. Put me back to where I sort of was, first year ASs before I did my resit. So I worked so hard to turn it around, and I was kind of back to square one, still with decent grades, but not what, I'd kind of in my head, I was, um, I wanted, I'm quite ambitious. I'm quite, um, some may say arrogant, but, I wanted them higher grades now that I'd, sort of, lived the high life. I've been up there, and I thought, I want to. That's what I want to achieve. So unfortunately, that didn't happen for me. So decided to go ahead and take a gap year, resit some modules, and use that time just to save money, and prep me for university. Unfortunately, my course actually was coming to an end, so they'd already rolled out a new course for the new students that come a year after us. So what actually had happened is by the time I'd finished my A2s, all the AS modules were off the exam. Well, they weren't creating exams or weren't letting you do anything with the AS part of the course. And then there was a 6-month period where you could resit parts of your A2. Luckily for me, I had quite high grades across the board in my AS. I was on quite good scores, and there were maybe 1 or 2 modules out of 9, maximum, that I really would have looked to increase, if at all. But to be perfectly honest, they were pretty strong across the board. I mean, my business A level had straight A's in my AS, so couldn't improve them really. And again, my English and IT were pretty much where I wanted them to be. But it was a couple of A2 modules that I needed to improve. So I used that sort of half a year of doing a few, reset, just bumping marks up a little bit in a few courseworks, and then had 2 exams that I sat. One for my business course to get me, because I was marginally off an A, so I needed to go up a little bit more in my business course to actually get that to an A. And then my English as well, I had 1 exam that was dragging me down, so I reset that to try and get myself up to a B in that. So I would have been on sort of ABC, which would have been quite good. I was quite happy with that. I felt like that was quite reflective of my ability. Even ACC wouldn't have been too bad. But yeah, that's certainly, I was pushing for the ABC grades. AS, I was already on an A and 2B, so I was quite confident and comfortable with that, and really happy overall. So I went ahead, resat the exams, submitted my coursework. So they went up in March. When I got my results back, they were as expected, so that was fine. My IT went up to the C grade that I needed. I was only a mark off anyway, so I just did a few little tweaks to my coursework and just made sure I definitely got enough marks. And then it was my English and business that I was, relying on. Didn't reset anything for business because, in terms of coursework, because I had straight A's across the board. So I actually had 5 A's. I think I got like 1 E right at the end, which was so frustrating because obviously you think, you're on straight A's and you think you're going to, go ahead and finish the job, but I didn't. So reset that final module thinking, I should. I think I needed to get a C in that final exam, and I nailed on, and that would get me enough marks for an A. So, felt really confident about that. English was feeling quite good because it was a synoptic paper. It was a 3-hour paper on like war literature, but I was quite good at that part of the course. So, yeah, I felt like I could, I felt like I had enough going for me to do well on that as well. And then basically what transpired was business studies. I ended up being 2 marks off a C, and my final paper made a bit of a mess of it again, and that finished me up with 1 mark off an A, which was so frustrating. I appealed it to try and just get an extra mark. That's all I needed. But they said no, the marking's fair. That's the way it is. And then my English paper, which was really frustrating as well. That actually got mislaid, lost in the post. Something went wrong with that, and they couldn't mark my script, so they had to give me an average across all my marks, which did put my mark up overall. but not enough to get me into the next grade boundary. So again, that didn't benefit me. We appealed that. My deputy head of year went and appealed that for us, but they just declined it and said no, it's the fairest way, which I can understand from a fairness perspective. Working on an average, I think it is fair from a exam board perspective, but if you've got a student who has specifically took time out to resit an exam, to try and improve their grade, and it's one they, could focus on, felt quite strong in. It is obviously really disappointing outcome, but we got to a point where I just thought there's no point in fighting the English paper, or well, either really. It was a case of there's nothing I can do. I mean, I could have kept fighting, but it got to a point where I thought I need to sort out my university place now, because um, I'd actually prioritised I'd actually put an application in for Loughborough University. It was the same course I went for the year before. Had an interview this time. Really looked quite good, and I was really keen to go. But my grades now put me in a position where I wasn't guaranteed a place. I would have been incredibly fortunate if I got a place. I was a couple of grades off at least. I mean, I think there was a little bit of leniency with the grades ordinarily, but I think I was just a bit too far off. I think maybe another grade or two up, I might have been okay, but I just didn't have enough. So it was a tough choice, and they couldn't guarantee me a place. I contacted the tutor and they said, look, you might get in, but we can't guarantee anything. It depends on how the places are allocated, and where you come out. So I just decided, you know what, I'm going to decline that and go through extra and just look for the best university within my sort of grades and what I can get. And I found one where I was only sort of 20 UCAS points off, which is the equivalent to a grade. So thought I'll go for that. And it's quite high profile. Ended up being University Kent. Quite highly ranked considering what my grades were and what they were asking for. So I went for that. Thought, you know what, gets me out of North Wales and gives me a new experience. And yeah, I actually got the unconditional for there. So I took that. And actually, when I graduated from there, they actually got into the top 20 in the UK in the Guardian. So, they went up quite significantly. So it was obviously, in hindsight, a very good choice to go there, considering my current situation. So yeah, overall, really, really good. Sorry, good choice with the university, but not so much obviously a good outcome with the results. So that's why I can really empathise with current students at the moment. But what I would say is that don't if it doesn't go your way, there are other options. You don't just have to go straight to university. You can look at potentially the gap year option, do some resets and things like that. That's what I did. I stand by that decision. I'm glad I didn't just dive in, even though I actually only increased my grading by 1 grade, and just increased my marks in my other 2 modules. I didn't even go up grades. But I think if I hadn't have done that, I'd always be looking back thinking, oh, what if I'd have, what if if I'd have resat them, what would I have got? At least now I know I tried and I did what I did. So I'm happy with that decision overall. It's just a shame that I didn't quite get the outcome that I wanted. But without going into too much of a tangent, because I'm going to do some videos about university and things like that as well. Turned out okay for myself in the end, and I've gone on from there to do reasonably well professionally. So it's not the be all and end all. It is frustrating, and obviously I do deeply sympathise. But once you sort of take your education further, or you get into the workplace and things progress that way, your A levels aren't going to be they're not going to mean as much to you anymore, if not anything at all, really. And it's not going to be that significant. But obviously, if I was in your boat now, definitely go for your appeals and just consider your options. So that was my thoughts on the sort of A-level controversy, and sort of my perspective and my experience, and maybe just talking you through some options as well. I hope this potentially reaches an audience and helps it, maybe just helps 1 or 2 people rethink their options. And yeah, thanks for watching. Comment and like and subscribe. to the channel. And yeah, if you comment, I'll look to interact as well, and more than happy to share my experiences. And that's what I'm going to continue to do through my videos, but also through the comment section as well. Happy to give advice and support to anyone who's a little bit younger, and wants a little bit of advice from someone who's been through that, and come out of the other end okay. So yeah, thanks for listening, and speak to you all soon.